Why is it that change often seems so elusive within health and social care systems? Allow me to introduce you to a concept that might shed some light on this: systemic disempowerment. It's a term that describes a pervasive problem, one that's deeply embedded in the very structures of large health and social care systems. Systemic disempowerment is a complex, multifaceted phenomenon. Picture a labyrinth of bureaucratic processes that seem almost designed to thwart change. Every attempt to navigate this maze can feel like traversing a dense, impenetrable forest, where the inertia of established procedures and hierarchies casts long, dark shadows over our efforts. Now imagine a vast network of individuals and groups, each with their own interests and goals. These diverse stakeholders often pull in different directions, creating a tug-of-war that can leave the system locked in stalemates. This balance of power is further complicated by financial constraints. The scarcity of resources acts like a tight leash, limiting ambitions and stifling innovation. Let us keep in mind leadership. In an ideal world, leaders guide their organizations through this fog of complexity, but in reality, their light often seems dimmed. Whether it's due to a lack of will, a sense of resignation, or their own battles with the system, leaders can become ensnared in the very inertia they're supposed to overcome. This can create a culture where maintaining the status quo becomes an unspoken mantra, squelching the spark of innovation. Systemic disempowerment goes far beyond individual instances of learned helplessness. It's a broader, deeper issue that's woven into the very tapestry of care delivery institutions. It's a hidden crisis, silently undermining the potential for change and progress. But don't despair. While this may seem like a daunting problem, understanding it is the first step towards addressing it. And that's exactly what we'll be exploring in the upcoming scenes, so stay tuned. Let us first distinguish learned helplessness from systemic disempowerment and see where they may overlap or interact. Think back to the late 60s when psychologists Martin Seligman and Stephen Meyer introduced the term learned helplessness. Their experiments with dogs subjected to inescapable electric shocks led to an understanding that creatures who experienced unavoidable distress eventually gave up trying to escape. This behavior contrasted sharply with those who had control over the shocks or never experienced them at all. The model of learned helplessness was then applied to human behavior from psychological and sociological perspectives. It was discovered that individuals exposed consistently to uncontrollable stress could reach a state of resignation, ceasing to change their circumstances even when change was possible. This theory evolved to include the concept of attributional style, which looks at how individuals interpret negative events. If you see unfortunate incidents as permanent and unchangeable, you're more likely to develop learned helplessness, and consequently, burnout or depression. But social psychologists also recognize that individual resilience and coping mechanisms meant that learned helplessness wasn't a universal response to stress that was beyond one's locus of control. Some people bounce back, others don't, and some are emboldened to fight harder. The concept of learned helplessness has been appreciated in management theory to explain why employees sometimes lack motivation, initiative, or creativity. But here's the thing. Learned helplessness is not the same as systemic disempowerment. While the former focuses on individual behavior and responses, the latter is applied to the intricate dynamics of groups within institutions. It's like comparing a single thread to an entire tapestry. In health and social care systems, systemic disempowerment is a complex narrative of bureaucratic processes, conflicting stakeholder interests, financial constraints, and leadership challenges. It's like a turbulent ocean where change is difficult to navigate and enact, and where the status quo stands like an immovable monolith. While learned helplessness explains individual behavior, systemic disempowerment examines the broader, more complex dynamics within institutions and organizations. Having understood both concepts, it is crucial to move into a comparative analysis of systemic disempowerment and learned helplessness. Let's begin with scope. While learned helplessness primarily focuses on individual experiences, systemic disempowerment takes a broader view, examining the impacts on entire organizations. It's like comparing a single tree to an entire forest. Both are important, but they exist on vastly different scales. Next, we look at impact. Learned helplessness can lead to a crippling sense of despair, a belief that one's actions can't bring about change. It's a personal struggle, often internalized and hidden. On the other hand, systemic disempowerment impacts not just individuals but entire groups. It's a pervasive force, stifling innovation and hindering progress on a grand scale. Now let's consider potential solutions. Overcoming learned helplessness involves fostering resilience, promoting a positive attributional style, and providing tools to cope with stress. It's largely a psychological battle, fought within the confines of one's mind. Systemic disempowerment, however, requires a different approach. It calls for structural changes, policy reform, and transformational leadership. It's a battle fought in the halls of power, in boardrooms, and through collective action. Yet, despite their differences, there's an undeniable overlap between these two concepts. Systemic disempowerment can breed learned helplessness, while individuals trapped in a cycle of learned helplessness can perpetuate systemic disempowerment. It's a vicious cycle, one that can only be broken through concerted, collective effort. Recognition is the first step. Taking action is not so easy. In essence, systemic disempowerment and learned helplessness may be two sides of the same coin. One mirrors the struggles of the individual, the other reflects the struggles of the collective. Both are deeply intertwined with the dynamics of power, control, and resilience, painting a complex picture of the challenges facing health and social care systems. As we've seen, both concepts offer valuable insights into the challenges facing health and social care systems, but they operate on different levels and require different strategies to address them. So, where do we go from here? How can systemic disempowerment be addressed? The first step is fostering inclusive leadership. Leaders need to be good listeners, bold, transformative, and ready to challenge the status quo. They should encourage dialogue, value every voice, and understand that every team member, regardless of their position, has something unique to contribute. Secondly, promoting transparency is vital. Openness about decision-making processes, policies, and resource allocation helps to build trust. When employees understand the why behind decisions, they feel more involved and less disenfranchised, and certainly more empowered. Lastly, encouraging innovation through creativity is key. This is not about reinventing the wheel, but rather about turning creative and even unpopular new ideas into transformative change. This might mean rethinking procedures, embracing new technologies, or simply fostering a culture where new ideas are welcomed and seen to be explored. While systemic disempowerment is a daunting challenge, it is not insurmountable. By understanding and addressing it, we can pave the way for more effective, responsive health and social care systems. Let us not just end here. Get talking about it with others. Discuss it. Raise awareness. Continue to step out of zones of comfort. Motivate your leaders. Share this video with others.